On this podcast, we explore fantastical thinking, moral panics, urban legends, conspiracy theories, hoaxes, and crazes, examine the forces that shape our culture, and tell the stories that create the realities we share, and sometimes the realities we don't. I'm your host, Chelsey Weber-Smith, and this is American Hysteria.
We are going to Klux, Indiana, as she has never been Kluxed before.
We're going to fulfill the promises of Donald Trump.
I called out all my big football players to take off after them and tear their shirts off.
From state to state, all across the nation, we need to unite. Join the Ku Klux Klan. Join with us. Join the Ku Klux Klan. Join with us.
It's difficult to estimate the total number of members at the height of the second Ku Klux Klan in the 1920s, but historians believe it was somewhere between 3 and 6 million, around 10% of the eligible white Protestant adult male population at the time. Not only that, but there were also hundreds of thousands of white Protestant women who made up the WKKK, the untold scores of youths who made up the groups for children and teens, and the millions more Americans who were passive supporters. In part 1 of this series, we saw how William Simmons, the grandson of a Confederate soldier, revived the Klan as a new fraternal order, with its own fantasy role-playing, a goofy language, nerdy rituals, and official uniforms, cosplay inspired by their favorite movie. The record-breaking blockbuster film, The Birth of a Nation, had just presented the post-Civil War Klan as valiant heroes fighting against sinister free black people and their white allies in the name of the glorious but victimized Old South, paving the way for a new, softer, pop version of the old group to emerge. We learn that through the proto-pyramid scheme created by Bessie Tyler and Edward Clark of the Southern Publicity Organization, the Klan's Kleagles, or salesmen, were paid a commission for every new recruit they brought on board, and portions of the membership fees, mandatory merch sales, and monthly and annual dues were sent up the sales ladder. Those at the top of the marketing structure were making the equivalent of millions of dollars a year by systematically identifying and exploiting the prejudices, grievances, and fears of each region in the country. While inflaming the hatred of immigrants, black people, Catholics, Jews, left-wing activists, and a score of moral deviants, they presented the Klan as the masculine yet peaceful army that could restore what they called 100% Americanism, the Protestant, God-fearing white supremacy that many felt was slipping away. Using a multitude of sympathetic preachers, an ecosystem of KKK media, and a collection of frightening conspiracy theories to inspire new recruits, leaders throughout the country also put on massive, family-friendly public fairs and parades, formed a wide variety of social clubs and baseball teams, and even put on summer camps for the youth groups. All the while, many members were committing acts of horrific violence and intimidation against their perceived enemies, with leaders then claiming they were false flags enacted by the enemies themselves, rejecting the notion that the organization was in any way a violent one. For the second and final part of this series, we're going to look at how a major newspaper expose and subsequent government hearing affected the group, and we're going to reveal their dramatic and bitchy behind-the-scenes power struggles. We'll also look at how a new leader transformed the Klan from a financial scheme into a political machine to bring about what they called the Invisible Empire. Then we'll explain the shocking controversy that would finally bring down the second KKK, hear stories about the people who fought against the hate group, and examine the many parallels we can find in our modern era to see how the same kind of money-making scam that worked in the 1920s is working quite effectively all over again.
They believe in law and order, and you will see. Believe in the Holy Bible and a white supremacy. They're a jolly good bunch, and you must understand that there isn't nothing wrong with the Ku Klux Klan. The Ku Klux Klan's going to give a big parade. The Ku Klux Klan, or know the reason why. The Ku Klux Klan's going to give a big parade. Won't you please tip your hat when the flag goes by?
X-ray! X-ray! Read all about it! X-ray! X-ray!
As the Klan rose to incredible prominence during the roaring 1920s, alongside silent movie stars, baseball legends, jazz musicians, and it girls of the flapper movement, the group proved a potent topic for newspapers looking for a sensational scoop. After the first 15 months that the Southern Publicity Organization had been doing PR for the KKK, they hadn't faced significant backlash. That is, until September 6, 1921, when the New York World rolled out the premiere headline in a series of 21 exposés that were also printed in a couple dozen other regional newspapers. First, investigative reporters and whistleblowers revealed the financial scam at the heart of the group, featuring the huge payoffs it provided for the PR firm by revealing Bessie's secret 14-acre property and luxurious mansion, complete with massive Corinthian columns. They detailed evidence of the group's many violent incidents, demonstrating that the Klan was not simply the law and order warriors that leadership claimed. The World also listed the various false conspiracy theories they used to whip up more and more public support throughout the country, and revealed to the public the dorky language and dumbass rituals created by William Simmons for all to snicker at. But somehow, the most damning story for the public was about Edward and Bessie's alcohol-fueled affair from the previous year. After the juicy details were printed, the pair went with the tried and true PR policy of deny, deny, deny. Bessie told the press, "The attack on my personal character, published in this morning's New York World, is a malicious lie. I do not believe that there was ever an American woman so persecuted and forced to make such a personal sacrifice as I am making for our cause." Edward publicly deemed the New York World
the biggest liar in America.
When these denials didn't do the trick, he relented that yes, despite being a married man, Bessie had cared for him when he wasn't feeling very well, and that was all he would say about that. But in a deadly PR sin, it appears the two were no longer collaborating on their responses to the press, unwilling to change her original story that shit never happened, this time invoking a little whiny white feminist rhetoric. Trying to injure an organization which stands primarily for the protection of womanhood by stooping so low as to attack the character of an innocent woman will not help their side. Shame on them is all I have to say. Panicked at their contradictory press misstep and desperate to realign their stories, Edward barged into the offices of the paper demanding a retraction to his previous statement about when he wasn't feeling very well. The chaos led one New Jersey Kleagle to call for Bessie's resignation in the paper the next day, so she retaliated by firing him immediately. Then she called a meeting with the high-ups at the Klan and went on a series of rambling tirades about what else but the evils of the press. Knowing what the outcome would be, she performatively held a vote on whether she should resign, and her many nervous acolytes, who were also enjoying the spoils of the single-level marketing scheme, unsurprisingly voted
nay.
But unbeknownst to her, Edward had quietly given both their resignations to the imperial wizard Simmons, a move that was then leaked to the press and thus discovered by the absolutely furious Bessie Tyler. She then went on the offensive, telling a reporter that Edward Clark was weak-kneed, perhaps the 1920s equivalent of calling him a soy boy or a cuck. She promised that she would continue her duties, even if it meant working without compensation. I'm so sure. Lucky for her, the overwhelmed and deeply incompetent Simmons would desperately not accept their resignation. More chaos ensued when the Searchlight paper, Bessie's own creation, put out a front-page article titled,
American Patriots, Hark!
As summarized in one of our main sources, Selling Hate, the Marketing of the Ku Klux Klan by Dale W. Lockman, here is what it said.
American patriots, the womanhood of this country has been criminally assaulted in the most diabolical and satanic manner known to the human race. An attempt has been made to ruin the character of a good woman by the most dastardly method of current times. Every word written in opposition to a great patriotic woman of Atlanta reeks with the blood of a grand innocent lady of Southern birth and standing. We issue the bugle call to all of you to buckle on your armor and defend this good lady, even with your lives. To you, American patriots, we address ourselves. Unleash your dogs of war and make these hounds of convict stripe pay the penalty for the great injury done.
This poorly thought out demand for action was a big problem for the Klan, as it was a serious crime to send calls to violence through the mail, so Simmons demanded that the associate editor issue a retraction on the Bessie piece. But the damage was done. More calls for Bessie and Edward's resignations came, but Simmons refused to entertain them, claiming that the accusations of impropriety were nothing but ridiculous rumors cooked up by the evil anti-Klan media to hurt the group's credibility. Yes, sir, things were getting pretty messy for the leadership of the KKK. Around 2 million readers would absorb the New York World's stories, and the series was a massive boon to the paper, with thousands upon thousands of new readers acquired as the nation hung on every salacious new installment. But there had been an expectation by these reporters and whistleblowers that shining a light on the violence, corruption, and hypocrisy of the new KKK would be its undoing. Oh, sweet summer child. While it certainly reinforced the anger and disgust of those who already disapproved of the Klan, the number of new memberships absolutely skyrocketed, reinforcing that old adage that there is no such thing as bad publicity. The world even directly, albeit unintentionally, provided an easy pathway for new members to sign up when they revealed the official Klan application, which thousands clipped and filled out, mailing it to the headquarters along with their $10 fee. It's been estimated that in the 2 weeks following the exposés, Bessie and Edward personally made the equivalent of $500,000.
The clerk would respectfully request members to maintain silence during the call of the roll and would ask the guests in the gallery to do the same.
However, the New York World articles did lead to a congressional hearing in which several Northern congressmen and the investigative team from the newspaper laid bare the crimes and financial structure of the tax-exempt KKK. But just as the proceedings began, just as the Klan was finally going to face potential consequences and regulations, dramatic news made its way out of Atlanta. The morning after the first day of the hearings, the New York World told the harrowing story under the headline,
"Fire at Mrs. Taylor. Attempt is made to kill woman official of Ku Klux Klan in her home outside Atlanta."
As you may have too, many of the Klan's detractors saw through this well-timed assassination attempt, and a few years later they would be proven right when the former secretary to Edward confessed that it had all been a hoax. He said that an immigrant from Greece had been paid by the Southern Publicity Organization to fake the shooting, and he provided the receipt for the payoff and the location of the weapon. But despite the assertion that leadership's lives were being put in danger by this government inquiry, the KKK hearing would continue on. Massachusetts Representative Peter Tague led the charge and set the tone for the many points they would be making, saying he felt the investigation was vital to the health of the nation.
"If the light of publicity is turned upon the grotesque, fantastic, ludicrous garb and ceremonies of this intolerant organization, which presumes to take the law in its own hands and hold sway through appeals to superstition, it will be found the sponsors have reaped a rich harvest."
But several congressmen were in fact big fans of the Klan, and Imperial Wizard Simmons was given a ridiculous amount of time to defend the group, culminating in 3 entire days of the former preacher's emotional, meandering grandstanding. He flattered the committee. He gave his trademark flowery quasi-sermons about the group's patriotism, benevolence, and strict moral codes, and presented them as an innocent, fraternal brotherhood, just like all the others. He said that any violence attributed to them was a trick by the opposition, and he went as far as to claim that no member of the Law and Order Klan would ever commit a crime, pointing the finger at the media for making up lies for profit and popularity. After his 3-day marathon of oration, he literally, I assume performatively, collapsed onto the hearing table before slowly pushing himself up, wiping his brow and thanking the committee gregariously. Ultimately, no actions would be taken against the Klan, largely because of the assertion that if they were to be investigated, well, wouldn't all fraternal orders have to be investigated too? At this time, fraternal groups were still massively popular, and pissing off that many men inside and outside the KKK was not going to benefit any politician. With no consequences handed down after the investigation, and with even more media exposure from the hearing, the membership continued to explode all over the country. More after this. And now, back to the show.
Hey, I want to go and have a little drink with us. Huh? Don't be so silly. Come on over.
Despite his success at the hearing, the Imperial Wizard was not doing well. His alcoholism was becoming more and more apparent as he slurred and stumbled in public, making obvious his problematic penchant for gambling on horses and prize fights. These moral failings, especially as they related to the Klan hot topic of prohibition, were absolutely not a good look for a group that had presented itself as the front line in a battle for the soul of the nation. And Bessie and Edward attempted to keep him out of the spotlight while they calculated their next move. The pair had formed a strong relationship with a very successful Great Titan from the realm of Texas, Hiram Evans, who, seeing the potential gap in leadership, pitched to the PR team why he should become the new Imperial Wizard. Together, they planned a little coup, offering to buy out Simmons to the tune of $140,000, or around $2.6 million today. As further pacification, they also offered him the illustrious but ultimately meaningless title of Emperor for Life, as long as he agreed to step down from his leadership role completely and hand over the reins to Hiram Evans. For the good of the Klan, and perhaps for the good of his wallet, he acquiesced to the smarmy betrayal. Okay, Grandpa, let's get you to bed. The vicious, politically ambitious Hiram Evans was the wealthy, Vanderbilt-educated son of a prominent judge, who, in addition to a great Titan, was also a dentist, using that fun fact to present himself not as a rich kid from a rich family, but as an everyman, or as he liked to call himself,
the most average man in America.
Bessie and Edward had agreed to help boost him into the ultimate power position on the condition that the three of them would rule this new version of the Klan together. But almost immediately after it all became official, he quickly and easily stabbed them in the back. As Imperial Wizard, he was now the sole person who could sever the contract with the Southern Publicity Organization, which is exactly what he did, no longer willing to allow them to siphon the majority of the Klan profits away from his much grander vision of the future. And thus, along with the creator of the group himself, the two major architects of the Ku Klux Scam were officially out, left to lick their white wounds and count their tax-exempt millions. Certainly, these public feuds and subsequent breakdown in leadership were creating chaos and anxiety within the rank and file of the Klan, so their superiors invoked the magic word of masculinity. They said that
real men
would stick with the Klan no matter what, that it would take
true manhood
to shoulder through the growing pains and make something even more powerful than before. One Grand Dragon put a positive spin on the issue when he said,
"Never before in the history of our great movement have the hearts and souls of manly men been thrilled with such emotion for our righteous cause. The spirit of Klancraft is bringing untold thousands of big, manly men into the fellowship."
With total control over the national organization, Imperial Wizard Evans got to work on his true vision, polishing the KKK from a fraternal order pyramid scheme into a massive political force. Using the populist talking points of saving the white working class, he mobilized more and more recruits who believed they were being wronged by the long list of Klan scapegoats. He organized the largest KKK marches and gatherings the country had yet seen, including a 4th of July meeting of 200,000 Klansmen in rural Indiana, with the same festival-esque charm and mass inductions that we covered in the last episode. But he was pickier with the membership, vetting new recruits to make sure they wouldn't put the Klan in a bad light. He attempted to curb the commission-based system where he could, though he was unable to enforce that change across the country. He told leaders to avoid raving hysterically and instead focus on the scientific presentation of facts. He continued to downplay the violence of the Klan, but, shockingly, the nonviolence he preached was not a true value to the new leader of the Ku Klux Klan. He had been extremely violent himself prior to becoming the Imperial Wizard, actually leading the kidnapping and torturing of a young black man in Dallas, burning the letters KKK into his forehead with acid. He had also attempted to create and organize what he called black squads to continue secret militant attacks against minority groups in systematic form. Now, there had long been collusion between certain government employees and the Klan, but there hadn't yet been a concerted effort to get Klansmen and their allies elected to political positions, to actually bring about the invisible empire. Evans' new national strategy was nicknamed the Decade, and it involved creating a state-by-state chart that analyzed every U.S. senator in terms of their Klan friendliness. In Indiana, for example, every county, or as they called them, Clantons, was led by an exalted Cyclops, and each congressional district, which they called a province, was led by a Great Titan, who acted as a chairman for the political group. Those working underneath the leaders would create massive lists with information on voters outside the KKK, and then each member would be pressured to get commitments from 10 people to vote for the Klan-preferred candidate. Not only that, but leaders would also bribe politicians with cash and favors to get them on board with their agenda, and would use their earnings to secretly fund the campaigns of their allies. For example, they dropped the equivalent of $1.4 million just to get their man, Ed Jackson, elected as the governor of Indiana. Somewhere in the ballpark of 11 senators, 16 governors, and several dozen representatives were Klansmen or closely allied to them, including the majority from Texas, Colorado, and Indiana. And to be clear, they were from both sides of the political spectrum. Several city governments, like Dallas and Fort Worth, were completely controlled by Klan-affiliated officials. In Colorado, it was even worse. Only one city, shout out to Colorado Springs, was not totally taken over by the KKK. I'm sure it will come as no surprise that countless police forces had many, many officers that were Klansmen themselves, or at least major sympathizers. Two men appointed to the Supreme Court, Hugo Black and Edward Douglas White, had at minimum strong ties to the Klan if they were not members themselves. President Truman was actually a member at one point, which he explained away by claiming that he thought it was just a patriotic group and quit soon after he discovered their real philosophy. The KKK backed Calvin Coolidge in his 1924 re-election run and tried to take full credit for the win. The Klan-affiliated Albert Johnson was appointed chair of the House Immigration Committee, leading to the passing of the extremely restrictive 1924 Immigration Act that created national quotas, and the vast majority of spots were reserved for white Protestants from the whitest European nations, just as the Klan had wanted. Another Kluxer, Congressman Hatton Sumners, became the leader of the House Judiciary Committee, able to use his power to shut down an anti-lynching bill. With the support of the Klan's millions of members, 30 states passed anti-miscegenation laws, that is, bans on marriages of people from different races. All the while, the women of the Ku Klux Klan were doing their part on a more intimate level. They organized boycotts against alien businesses and created directories of Klan-owned companies for members to patronize. These skirted lieutenants were known as poison squads of whispering women, who would essentially weaponize their gossip to spread rumors about the unsavory practices of immigrant-owned businesses and spread slanderous stories about politicians they considered enemies of the Klan. The more official political work focused on flooding school boards with their members in order to get Protestant Bibles placed into schools, to get Catholic teachers fired, and Catholic schools closed.
We need an organization that respects what we respect. We need to unite, not just here in Indianapolis, but all across the state, from state to state. We need to unite. Unite with us now, all across the nation. Join the Ku Klux Klan. Join with us. Join the Ku Klux Klan.
Back when he was planning the coup, Hiram Evans had become friends with another rising star in the movement, the Grand Dragon of the Klan stronghold of Indiana, D.C. Stevenson, a man who once said, like a true fucking loser,
"We are going to Klux, Indiana, as she has never been Kluxed before."
And Klux he did. Under his leadership, 20 to 30% of eligible Indiana men became members, and he would go on to say that he was the law in Indiana. Evans had to admit that Stevenson's charisma and skills as a public speaker were far better than his own, so they formed a powerful alliance, and Stevenson became the new chief recruiter for 7 states. He certainly didn't lack the massive ego needed to lead a national movement, once telling the press,
"I'm a nobody from nowhere, really, but I've got the biggest brains. I'm going to be the biggest man in the United States."
And because of his high position in the marketing hierarchy, he was raking in the equivalent of millions of dollars a year, buying a massive mansion in Atlanta, as well as a second summer home and a yacht. But you may be shocked to discover that D.C. Stevenson was a prolific liar, fraud, and criminal. He lied about his service in World War I. He lied about being a millionaire son of a successful businessman. He lied about the companies he owned. He lied about his romantic past. He had been married at least 3 times when he entered the Klan. He was an alcoholic, a wife beater, a belligerent fist fighter, and a serial sexual abuser, and he too wanted total control of the KKK. As more and more of his impropriety was revealed, the relationship between the buttoned-up Evans and the unsavory Stevenson became increasingly contentious. The 2 men were soon wrestling for control, which culminated in Evans attempting to boot Stevenson out of his position as Grand Dragon, but he would not go down without a fight. He knew that enough of the Clavern leaders in his state were loyal to him, so he broke away and formed his own rival KKK, even bringing a disgruntled and disheveled William Simmons out of retirement to parade him around as a sign of the new Klan's legitimacy. Stevenson, Simmons, and Evans battled it out in public, accusing one another of sexual crimes, violence, and fraud, a messy struggle for power and profit, and of course, for their own personal supremacy.
Yes, we belong to the Ku Klux Klan. We belong to the Ku Klux Klan. We'll protect your wives and mothers anywhere in this great land. For we belong to the Ku Klux Klan. Yes.
As we've heard, one of the foundational talking points of the Klan from its beginnings was that the organization was a singular force protecting white Protestant womanhood from all the non-100% Americans. But the undoing of the KKK would demonstrate the opposite when D.C. Stevenson was charged and later convicted of the horrific kidnapping, rape, and second-degree murder of a young state employee named Madge Oberholster that left her body covered in bite marks. It was on her deathbed that she told investigators everything, as she succumbed to a staph infection caused by the assault, as well as poisoning from a suicide attempt that happened just hours after she escaped. Despite the mountains of evidence provided at trial, Stevenson would claim that this tale was a conspiracy cooked up by Evans. But it was Madge's heroism in her last moments on Earth that would prove to be the most important action in bringing down the second coming of the Ku Klux Klan. After his life sentence was announced, D.C. Stevenson expected a pardon from Indiana Governor Ed Jackson, the man he believed he had won the election for. When Jackson refused, Stevenson took revenge not just against him, but against every Klan-affiliated politician in the nation. He leaked confidential lists of the officials that the group had secretly funded and paid off, and took interviews to further reveal the group's underground political machine. Soon, Ed Jackson would be indicted along with several other high-ranking politicians, and many others were forced to resign. As more and more leaders and the politicians who supported them were revealed to be amoral, greedy, hypocritical, involved in violent crimes, sexual crimes, embezzlement, fraud, alcoholism, gambling, and womanizing, rank-and-file members seemed to wake up to the reality of what they were part of, or at least recognized the bad personal PR, and they started to drop off in droves. In Indiana, where Stevenson was convicted, the membership dropped from its peak in 1925 of 250,000 to just 4,000 by 1928. The dominoes soon fell elsewhere, with national membership falling from its peak of several million to mere tens of thousands by 1930. More after this. And now, back to the show. Although the Klan reached record numbers in both membership and general acceptance, there were certainly many, many people who actively worked against them, whether it be through writing scathing articles, organizing protests, making anti-Klan art, or even fighting them physically. Along with the NAACP, who had tried to nip this shit in the bud with the protests against the birth of a nation, the American Legion, the Freemasons, the Farm Bureau, and the ACLU worked together to combat their political influence and help pass anti-Klan legislation. State and local governments who were against the group responded by passing anti-mask laws to cut down on their anonymous crimes, as well as laws that made it mandatory for klaverns to publish their membership lists. Though the KKK was able to get many Protestant churches into their fold, they were unable to influence many of the more liberal denominations, like the Episcopalians, Presbyterians, and Methodists, who often railed against the group to their own congregations. The Roman Catholic Chicago-based group, the American Unity League, was dedicated to fighting against prejudices of all kinds, whether they be based on race, nationality, or religion. One major mission of the group was smashing the invisible empire in Illinois, and they did so by infiltrating different klaverns to steal their membership lists and to publish them in their magazine called Tolerance. The idea was that public shaming would not only get people to desert the Klan, but it would make people afraid to join up in the first place. Along with creating boycott lists of Klan-affiliated businesses, they also published a pamphlet called Is Your Neighbor a Kluxer?, which included lists of Chicago members, along with truthful information about the dangers of the group. In the midst of the race riots that had scalded the nation during the Red Summer and the sudden return of the KKK, a Black liberation group called African Blood Brotherhood formed as, quote, organized and uncompromising opposition to the Ku Klux Klan, and to serve as a self-defense organization for Black people threatened by the violence of the order. In addition, a secretive Catholic group calling themselves the Knights of the Flaming Circle organized themselves in 1923, an order that agreed to take any new member as long as they opposed to the KKK. Together they would stop Klan marches with blockades and rip the robes off members, often leading to public street fights. They would call on the community to stand up alongside them, and together they would often outnumber the Klan marchers by the thousands. Often, local communities took it upon themselves. At one Klan parade in Bloomfield, New Jersey, neighbors ripped the robes and hoods off the marchers. In Newcastle, Delaware, another 1,000 people chased the Klan off of a field where they were burning a cross, which they then destroyed. In Perth Amboy, New Jersey, thousands of community members interrupted a Klan-sponsored lecture by forcing their way through the doors and yelling down the speaker, effectively ending the event. The Klan was angry that their right to free speech had been infringed upon by the protesters, and they returned 3 months later promising retribution. 500 Klansmen in full regalia showed up to the diverse working-class city and were met with a mass of 6,000 1,000 locals ready for a fight. The police threw tear gas at the anti-Klan group, bringing in the fire department, who tried to spray the townspeople with fire hoses. But the protesters simply slashed the hoses, pushed back against the police, and then chased the KKK out of their town. The Klan planted 12 bombs across Ohio's Catholic University of Dayton and burned an 8-foot cross at the edge of the campus lawn. As the students who had not yet left for the holidays ran to destroy the cross, dozens of cars full of hundreds of KKK members taunted them and screamed violent threats. The Dayton football coach would later tell the press,
"I called out all my big football players to take off after them and tear their shirts off."
And those beefcakes were not alone that day. Hundreds from the working-class Catholic neighborhood watched the brewing confrontation and came to protect the students, surrounding the cars and chasing the Klan out of town. Also in 1923, the KKK planned a parade in the majority Catholic town of South Bend, right by the Catholic Notre Dame University. 500 students came to create a show of force against the group, literally running 2 miles to where the Klan was coalescing. They came at the Klansmen, stole their robes and hoods, chased them back to the building where they were headquartered, a large cross lit with red light bulbs burning in the second-story window. The students found a barrel of potatoes outside a grocery store and began hurling them at the cross, shattering the glass and then breaking each red light bulb, leaving only one at the very top. No one could reach it with their potato until the captain of the football team stepped forward and arced a beautiful throw at the cross, exploding the final fiery bulb to massive celebration. As was often the case, the police sided with the Klan and deputized 30 members, and together they attempted to beat the shit out of these students, who fought back in a bloody brawl. The Klan would have to leave town without their festival going forward, and would use the event to paint themselves as victims, claiming the students were there to attack Protestant women and the upstanding members of their group, that they were ripping down and trampling American flags, and went so far as to claim that one student yanked an infant out of its carriage just to slap it across the face and then throw it back at the mother. After their fall from grace in the mid-1920s, the smaller Klan continued to evolve their list of scapegoats, and with gay and gender non-conforming people becoming more visible in the 1930s, they set their sights on queer establishments, like the La Palma nightclub in Dade County, Florida, where striptease, drag, burlesque, and risque comedy were nightly affairs. One evening, close to 200 Klansmen and Klanswomen burned a cross in front of the building and then streamed inside to beat up the performers and staff. Just 2 weeks later, the police would do the same thing, minus the burning cross, leading many to believe that some of those Klanspeople were also on the force. But the raids only strengthened the bonds within the queer community, as well as their resolve. The club reopened soon after, and as the manager said, offered spicier entertainment than ever, and actually created a satirical skit in which the queers acted out the raid on the club in their makeshift Klan robes, giving their patrons the gift of laughing at the many embarrassing qualities of their abusers. This was another common act of defiance. Oftentimes, Klan detractors just made fun of them. In one tame but relatable example, a comic I found on newspapers.com was titled,
"In the Ku Klux Language of the Nighty Nights."
The first panel is headed with the words,
"Crime Wave,"
and shows one Klansman holding up another at gunpoint while saying,
"Klans up,"
as the victim responds, "Kelp! Kelp!" The next panel is headed Incluel, with a hooded teacher teaching a hooded class new animal vocab words. Clat.
Clat.
Clow.
Clow.
Clog.
Clog.
Another shows a Klansman at a diner telling a Klan server,
I want a plate of knodel kloop, a klish of ice cream, and a cup of coffee.
To which he responds,
The Clodfish is very excellent today, sir.
And then there were the protest songs, including the 1921 classic There's a Bunch of Clucks in the Ku Klux Klan by Sam Coslow and Leon Friedman, which also makes fun of the Klan. But I couldn't find a recording, so I asked my friend AJ McKinley of Magpie Cinema Club to do his rendition.
There's a bunch of clucks in the Ku Klux Klan, and they're all cuckoo, that's true. With their awful hoke, they're an awful joke when you watch the things they do. We ought to pile them in some asylum and never let them out. 'Cause we don't know and they don't know what the deuce it's all about. There's the Grand High Punk with his Grand High Bunk and his Grand High Palace too. But I just found out how we got that palace, and I'll tell you. Each little cluck pays one little buck, but he's out of luck 'cause he'll get stuck when he finds they're all cuckoo in the Ku Klux Klan.
Even D.W. Griffith, the director of The Birth of a Nation, that essentially created the cosplay of the new Klan, denounced the group. Quote,
It may be flattering to find that the present Klan has copied the picture so closely, but it is not a welcome thought to me that I have been in any responsibility for the spread of the order. I have regarded the present Klan, insofar as I had given it any thought at all, as a rather childish affair, and not to be taken seriously by intelligent people. But it is plain that it must be taken more seriously than that. Let me say as emphatically as possible that I am in no way in sympathy with the present Ku Klux Klan, its aim or its methods. That, on the contrary, I regard as a menace to American institutions, and that if my picture, through romantic lights in which it presented the original Klan, has been in any way responsible for its inception or growth, I regret it most profoundly.
As an appropriate conclusion to any financial scam, the last dregs of the second Ku Klux Klan would finally be investigated by the federal government in the mid-1940s and subsequently sued for the equivalent of $12.5 million in back taxes, kneecapping what little remained of the national structure and effectively ending the second KKK altogether. But as we know, the third wave of the Klan would emerge again in response to the civil rights movement a decade later, beginning with the Supreme Court's 1954 Brown versus the Board of Education decision. Their focus thus returned to Black Americans and their allies, and they used bombings, beatings, and lynchings to try to combat integration and attempt to return the country to the Jim Crow era. But unlike the KKK of the 1920s, this iteration had no real central leadership, just disconnected vigilante posses that were cosplaying the second Klan, which was cosplaying a movie about the first Klan. Compared to the millions of members in the 1920s, the third wave totaled at most 50,000, but the destruction they caused was profound. In the modern era, only a few thousand Klansmen remain in disconnected caverns, mostly concentrated in the Deep South. But the spirit of their movement, most especially the spirit of their movement in the 1920s, remains. After his reign as Grand Wizard in the 1980s, the deeply irritating, plastic-faced David Duke, who made a somewhat successful foray into Louisiana politics in the early 90s, strongly endorsed President Donald Trump in the 2016 and 2020 elections, believing that his vision for America was close to his own.
We are determined to take our country back. We're going to fulfill the promises of Donald Trump. That's what we believed in. That's why we voted for Donald Trump, because he said he's going to take our country back.
Exactly 100 years ago, the second rise of the KKK crashed and fizzled out because of the various leaders' blatant financial greed, their insatiable hunger for power, their bumbling incompetence, their substance abuse, their immoral behavior, their violence and sexual crimes, and the fact that they couldn't stop stabbing each other in the back. As you may have felt throughout this episode, the parallels to the present day are striking. The president and his gaggle of amoral profiteers rose in a similar way to the second wave of the KKK, inflaming whatever prejudices lay under the skin of potential voters, pitching various scapegoats, whether they be immigrants of color, Muslims, black people, trans people, socialists, so-called communists, liberal elites, and the list goes on. Just like the Klan, they preyed on both the frustrations of the white working class and anxieties around masculinity, also using the protection of womanhood as a rallying cry, while spreading blatant conspiracy theories at an almost constant rate. This movement, too, has its own media ecosystem, including the president's own social media platform and the various arms of companies like Fox News and Newsmax that give a steady drip of the same kind of red meat rhetoric provided by the salespeople of the Klan. And don't even get me started on the podcasters. There is a legion of Protestant preachers at this administration's back, hyping up the allegedly patriotic movement to their followers as a kind of holy war against the same forces that the KKK called out 100 years ago. Lately, they've attempted to create fun and family-friendly spectacles, like UFC Freedom 250 and the Great American State Fair with its record-breaking fireworks show, not to mention the many rallies that have a similar tenor to those we've talked about over the series. Bessie Tyler's hyperbolic, bitchy speeches about her victimhood and heroism may as well have come out of Trump's mouth. Same with Edward Clark's constant bullying of anyone questioning his actions. William Simmons' ridiculous grandstanding is familiar too, as is D.C. Stevenson's self-aggrandizement and Hiram Evans' campaign of financial political manipulation. Add in the constant and incredible denials of reality related to the crimes of the leaders or their followers as either media lies or false flags perpetrated by their enemies, and you've got a perfect picture of the general temperament of this administration. Through bribery and political pressure, they have gobbled up so many weak-kneed members of the government, and just like the Klan, they've managed to do all of this while looking incredibly fucking stupid at the same time. As a comparison to the dorkiest aspects of the KKK's fraternal order, we can look back at the cringy online memes of the alt-right supporters that came about during Trump's rise, with their secret language and inside jokes about Pepe the Frog, their divine god Kek, and the Storm. Or the Proud Boys with their eye-roll initiation rituals in dweeby uniforms, along with their sad attempts at appearing as memified, hypermasculine warriors. We can look at the new It Boys, Patriot Front, with their white face coverings and ill-fitting khakis and low beige baseball caps, who force their recruits, which they call their warrior elite, to buy more and more branded merch, as well as propaganda supplies like flyers, stickers, and stencils, which they are required to prove through photographs that they are putting up constantly. This can sometimes cost members up to hundreds of dollars a month, which of course profit the top of the group's hierarchy. The allure appears to be timeless, the allure of cosplaying a fantastical battle against evil forces, and the ego trip of being part of an allegedly masculine secret society with rituals and codes and costumes. We can even look at the president's fantasy world, created by AI-generated posts of himself as a winged knight, as a Jedi, a king, as a commander, as Jesus. We can even look at the kind of YouTube prankster, anti-PC comedy podcaster to right-wing influencer pipeline, where jokesters, such as the original Klan like to portray themselves as, slowly transform into something far more sinister. On another note, as often as multiple times a day, the president's marketing team blasts out sensationalized, emotional, spammy emails to its massive list of supporters. The following example from January of 2026 combines the never-ending extreme pressure to donate money with that trademark immigrant scapegoating, all processed through some demented funhouse mirror.
You an illegal alien. Your file says you're a top MAGA patriot, but my records to my survey still say response pending. Don't tell me you're an illegal alien. That cannot be true. This is your final moment to prove me wrong, please. Please. Are you a proud American citizen, or does ICE need to come and track you down?
You are then asked to take a little survey to prove that you are his version of 100% Americans. Questions about citizenship status, what region of the country you live in, your political affiliation, your age, and your gender. That question offers 3 choices: male, female, or I'm insane. The next 2 questions ask,
do you agree only United States citizens should be allowed to vote in our elections?
And
do you believe that every illegal immigrant should be deported?
With the options,
yes, they all broke the law.
Or
no.
In order to complete the survey, in order to prove that you are 100% American, lest ICE come and take you away, you must do what else but donate to the billionaire president. They've also been caught sending sneaky marketing emails with a box auto-checked, so any donation will recur without notice, netting the president millions of dollars from his unsuspecting supporters. Of course, followers are pressured to buy merch, cheap products at high markups, like various versions of his signature baseball hat, along with the Trump Mobile T1 smartphones, the Never Surrender high-top sneakers, the Fight, Fight, Fight luxury watches, Trump Victory cologne and perfume, which is stored in a mini gold statue of Trump, Trump American Eagle electric guitars, branded clothing, golf gear, robes and slippers, blankets, glassware, skincare, jasmine room spray and diffuser set, coffee pods, and steaks, the profit of which hit hundreds of millions of dollars every year. There's also the Trump coin crypto and NFT trading cards, from which the Trump family has made around $1.5 billion alone. Just as the KKK mixed patriotism and Protestantism, the Trump-sponsored God Bless the USA Bible includes the U.S. Constitution, the Pledge of Allegiance, and the Declaration of Independence alongside Scripture.
All Americans need a Bible in their home, and I have many. It's my favorite book. It's a lot of people's favorite book. God Bless the USA Bible. It's just very important and very important to me. I want to have a lot of people have it. You have to have it for your heart, for your soul. Many of you have never read them and don't.
One of those bad boys will cost you between $59.99 and $99.99, depending on the edition, and this item alone has netted the president at least $1.5 million. I don't know, that sounds like a sin. The biggest difference between the leaders of the 20s KKK and this administration is the unprecedented power they've been able to amass through their charismatic leader. With various political maneuvers, they've been able to put the grift into overdrive, siphoning billions of our tax dollars to themselves and their billionaire allies, while cutting social safety nets the public deserves, as gas, grocery, and rent prices soar, as the job market tanks, as health insurance premiums skyrocket, and we spend billions on foreign wars to enrich government contractors and tech companies with our own hard-earned money. Pointing out a similar issue, a national speaker for the 1920s KKK, Captain Thomas Lexington Avant, said after leaving the group, quote, "Of the millions of dollars collected by the Klan, none of the funds ever came back to benefit the Klan members." As immigrants, undocumented or not, are kidnapped off the street or even murdered by a new force of government-sponsored goons, another masked legion of terroristic losers, they also gun down those activists who stand up for their communities. As more and more members of our multicultural society are further marginalized, as the administration's vicious moral policing changes the very soul of the nation to a strangled husk, can anyone of sober mind really say that now their life and the lives of the people they love have actually gotten better? Movements that align with a kind of hyper-capitalist fascist ideology run best when there are as many scapegoats as possible, when the populace is blasted with an exaggerated picture of political and cultural and moral decline, and when their marks can be convinced that they are superheroes, powerful knights on a crusade to save their people from an ever-increasing roster of existential threats. Through presenting an apparent answer to a wide variety of grievances around anything from race to religion to prohibition, the KKK were able to create a massive coalition, far larger than they could have if they only railed against one kind of scapegoat or one political or moral issue. As more and more people signed on to address specifically their personal villain or their local grievance, they reinforced the other bigotries of the group, whether they originally meant to or not, slowly endorsing a future vision of America they maybe only partly believed in, but soon conformed to, a cog in a machine created solely for the profit and power of those at the top. Now, it's important to point out that those at the top of both the 1920s KKK and this administration did not invent these American prejudices, but they were extremely skilled in inflaming and exploiting them in a kind of bigoted get-rich-quick scheme. Just like the Klan, this administration has railed against so-called government waste, fraud, and corruption, as long as it can be blamed on big liberal cities with diverse populations, while simultaneously welcoming waste, fraud, and corruption within their own ranks. The Klan often claimed to be taking on the elites, yet touted the mega-rich at the very top as upstanding examples of the American dream, as long as they were their version of 100% Americans. Otherwise, they were in on the great conspiracy against the real 100% Americans. But unsurprisingly, the Klan also became known for skipping out on payments to the laborers who worked on their various projects, which makes sense because the leaders, in their sweaty grandiosity, loved to begin recklessly extravagant projects, only to lose interest once they became too difficult to finish. While the KKK claimed to be the saviors of the white Protestant working class, they teamed up with corporations to break unions made up of different races, ethnicities, and religions, telling their supporters that it was not the exploitation of a hyper-capitalist system run by the richest people in the world that was making their lives worse, but instead, it was the scapegoats who had even less power than the white workers did. Because the idea of a diverse yet unified America, a great coalition fighting to make life materially better for all people in the working and middle class, is one of the worst things that those getting rich at our expense can imagine. And so, they find more and more creative ways to divide us. Just as those who resisted the KKK were from vastly different walks of life, if we can align ourselves with people who are different from us, rather than create an army of Klan-esque soldiers of sameness, the odds of us making it through this moment increase exponentially. While billionaires and their political cronies use artificial intelligence to make themselves into muscular superheroes and armored knights, reality shows they look more like sniveling, blown-out cartoon supervillains, and they aren't even doing that on purpose. The majority of us pushing back against this national takeover don't have that same embarrassing, narcissistic void within our psyches, that baffling, fantastical insecurity, that profound weakness that leads the most powerful people in the world toward a desperate need for more and more power, a goofy, unhinged cosplay of otherworldly power to prove to themselves that they are not pathetic, unlovable creeps. This insatiable hunger has strangled their deepest human souls, and they've become living caricatures because they cannot bear the mortifying truth of who they really are. The rest of us don't need to LARP in this real life as crusading knights or elite warriors or imperial wizards, because for us, this world, our world, is the real world, and we are so very real to each other. And how sad it is to imagine the delusional, sour hell these waxy ghouls have made for themselves, the one they want to seduce us toward as well, if not get rid of us completely. But after all we've been through, we certainly know how to spot a scam, and the people have already proven that together we have the power to chase every legion of malicious, masked losers out of our towns, and we can do it again. This was American Hysteria. If you want to support our show and help make sure that we can continue to create it, you can go to patreon.com/American Hysteria or subscribe on Apple Plus. You'll get ad-free episodes as well as bonus content like Hysteria Home Companion, the other podcast that I make with our producer Miranda, where we tell you stories related to the topics that we cover and stories that we know that you'll love. On occasion, you'll also get episodes of Dispatches from the Field, where I talk in an unedited, uninterrupted stream of consciousness for an hour, telling stories from my life about whatever topic I choose. That's patreon.com/American Hysteria or subscribe on Apple Plus. If you go to AmericanHysteria.com, you can pick up some of our merch. 100% of those profits go to the Samir Project in Gaza, a Palestinian-led mutual aid group. You can also leave us a message on the Urban Legends hotline about a tale that you remember from growing up or one you've heard recently, and we might do an entire investigation about it. American Hysteria is written, produced, and hosted by me, Chelsey Weber-Smith. Our producer and editor is Miranda Zickler. Our associate producer and sound designer is Riley Swedelius-Smith, and our voice actor is Will Rogers. Thanks, as always, for listening. And remember, it's always okay to make fun of fascists.